We don't want our boys to need what they really need. We don't want them to have this need to go into the woods and pick up a stick and shoot an invisible bear because he's figuring out.
So violent.
They're violent. They have a natural aggression in them. And if you start to say, no, they don't, no, they don't, no, they don't, then you do a huge disservice to the boy because the aggression just builds and builds and builds, and it comes out sideways in a very bad way. They need to have imagination. They need to allow to play with a stick that they think is a gun to shoot the invisible bear that freaks modern mothers out because they hate guns.
Right.
So they don't want our boys to play with a stick. Well, you can't do that because you need to acknowledge that boys have a need for physical expression and to figure out the pecking order, even if it's imaginary.
Welcome to the aggressive life. It's no secret, or at least no secret if you've been around me at any point recently, or for that matter, read anything in the New York Times or any periodical that men are not well. They are the most endangered gender in our culture today. It's like 75% of all suicides in the last 10 years have been men. The loneliness epidemic is horrible. There's pressures on young men that fortunately I didn't have to deal with when I was prepubescent and pubescent. I guess pubescent is a word, right? Pubescent?
It sounds like a word, I think.
I heard prepubescent, pubescent.
Sure.
I just don't want to say the word pube. Basically, anytime I can say the word pube,
it's a good day.
That's a good day, especially when it's on a podcast. Anyway, it's one of my topics that I've given a good portion of my brain to. And more people in our culture are noticing we've got a problem. And there's a woman who has been speaking on family issues and all kind of issues, and just very, very, very well educated, well traveled, just a smart woman. And I'm excited to have her on. I've been a fan of her work for a while. Meg Meeker, MD. She has been referred to as America's Mother, and she has a book out that's called Boys Should Be Boys, 7 Secrets to Raising Healthy Boys. She's been featured in big wig programs and periodicals, and now she's on The Aggressive Life. Welcome to The Aggressive Life, Dr. Meg
Thank you so much. I've
Meeker.
never heard of radio stations or television shows referred to as bigwig. So perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly, Meg.
Yeah.
Well, tell me why you drifted into the study on boys. You were dealing with sexual reproduction stuff a while ago and some other things. What brings you into the world of boyhood?
Well, here's what happened. Well, first of all, I went to an all-women's college in the 70s, so I was right in the middle of the feminist movement revolution and the sexual revolution. And so I've seen all of this happening and coming, and I've seen this sort of glamorizing of women and, sort of elevation of women and the put down of men for many, many years. But here's what happened when I started writing about dads, and that is with my father-daughter book. What I was seeing in my office were a lot of, kids, girls in particular, just sort of, bouncing along in life and struggling and this and that. Not necessarily horribly, but those girls who had dads involved in their lives, not dads with a PhD psychologist, good guys who were involved in their lives, those were the girls who came out of their troubles or got through their troubles much faster and much better. But what I was seeing on television and music and media is that dads were portrayed as the butt of all jokes. You drink too much beer. You lay around in your lazy boy loungers far too long and try to find a decent Father's Day card. So I go, well, wait a minute. What I'm seeing in reality is that dads are enormously important in kids' lives. But what I was seeing outside of my office was this dumbing down of dads. And I thought, this is not okay. And then I said the proverbial, somebody has to do something about it or say something. And so there came the book. And I learned this is interesting, when I was researching for my boy book, if you try to find literature research on boys and men, and then you look for research on mothers and women, it's probably 4-to-1 women to men. In other words, you're just not worth researching. We are, the women. And I thought, this is not okay. This is really not okay. So I was advocating for my patients, but also I had a son, and I thought, I don't want him growing up feeling like he's not good enough, or he's not strong, he's not a man. And that's why I kind of thought, wait a minute, we need to teach boys and men that they're not like women. And interestingly, isn't that the timing now with all the transgender stuff? It's sort of circling back around and hitting pretty hard.
Yeah, you mentioned you said something that I want to cycle back to right at the beginning of your stuff there. You said you're around for the elevation of women and the put down of men. I see the elevation of women, which for the most part I see really, really positively, way back in the day when women didn't have opportunities and women were second-class citizens, and women. There was a necessary, raising up of women, and still needs to be. But very few people are willing to go on the record and say, and the put down of men. What do you mean when you say the elevation of women and the put down of men?
Okay, so here's what happened. Women in the 70s said, wait a minute, we're getting the shaft. Our mothers, weren't able to work outside the home. They could be a nurse or a teacher, that's it. And so we came along and go, oh, no, I don't think so. So, I got it in my craw, and everybody at my college, we're going to be professionally very successful. And so we launched. That was great. We got a lot of support. But then we moved into an era that said, we can do it all. We can be great at home. We can be great mothers. We can be great professionals. And this is really good. Then we moved into a position that said, oh, and guess what? We can do that so well. We don't need our husbands around. And then we morphed into finally, oh, guess what? We can have children alone. We don't need men. As a matter of fact, they're kind of a noose around our neck, their weight. And what happened as women got more and more attention and more support, if you will, there was a sense that we pushed men and pushed them out of the way. And the message was very clear. We don't need you. We just don't need you. Look at Hollywood. And so if you take over time the message that we just don't need men and we don't need dads, and kids don't need dads. I mean, come on. That's what happens. And my sense is, why couldn't we champion women and champion men at the same time?
Right.
But women didn't want that. We didn't want competition. We didn't want threat. You're absolutely right. I consider myself a feminist. But I need a husband, and my kids need a dad, and men are great. So it went through all these different stages, and the stage we're in right now is that really men are an accessory.
Right. Well, there's been actual articles published in blue ribbon publications with titles like "Do We Still Need Men?" And the heart behind it, or at least some of the phraseology is, hey, we used to need men's backs and their muscles to lift things and to build things and all, but it's automated and it's outsourced in many ways. Do we really need men? I mean, just to think, as fair as that question is, given how culture is changing, just imagine under any auspices saying, do we really need women? Oh my gosh.
Have a war. You'd have a war on your hands. And but here's what I do as a physician. I speak for kids. My job is to advocate for kids and say what they can't say. And every single kid who has a dad, and they need their dad, and they know it. But none of the adults, well, I shouldn't say none. Some of the adults won't acknowledge it.
Right.
That's not okay with me, because kids can't say at 1 or 8 or 15, I need my dad. And they all know they have one. And maybe some of them never knew their dad, but they know he's there. And they still, this is interesting, if you don't mind me throwing in a little anecdote. I worked with a number of the NFL players for quite a while, and many of them didn't have dads. And they asked me to come in and talk to them about parenting, and I said, you have the wrong person. I don't even know how the game is played. I'm thoroughly unimpressed with professional athletes.
I'm a feminist, darn it. I went to an all-woman school.
I'm a middle-aged grandmother, for heaven's sakes. But anyway, said, no. You're the person we need because there's one person they respect and in their lives and will listen to, and that is their mother. So anyway, in talking with them, it was they articulated how horrible it was without a dad, and how in many of their lives it was either jail or football, but they were directionless. They just didn't know. And then I asked, this is so fascinating. They got very, very honest with me. I asked about some of their bad behaviors, and we won't talk about what those are. And I said, why do you do that? I mean, it was in a group call. Why do you do that? And they said, oh, that's easy. I said, really? They said this, which was profound. We don't know our dads, but we believe that this is how he behaved. And when we repeat it, it makes us feel closer to him. Okay, so say they're violent. They and their mother had, they have 6 kids and 6 different dads for each of the kids. Their perception was that this is how their dad behaved, and they sort of gravitate to it, and that makes them feel closer to their dads. Now, that doesn't make sense to some of us, but here's my point. Still, without a dad, they were longing for a dad. Even they didn't know a dad. And you could just tell, here are these men playing these, professional games, paid millions of dollars to get out in the field and sort of live on the edge of rage. And then they would come home and they go, I have no clue what to do now. I have no idea what to do. What does a father say to his kids? What do I say to my wife? How do I do? Literally. And there was a huge split in their personhood, if you will, And so dads are not only crucial to boys in particular, they're critical. They're critical. The couple years ago, they had the incidents, was it in Louisiana in the high school where the kids were out of control? There was too much violence. Are you familiar with that?
The African-American dads came in, yes.
And then they put 40 dads said, okay, we're done with this. And they just walked the halls. One of them took a day, they walked the halls, another day. And after a couple weeks, guess what happened to the violence in the school? It plummeted. Because men were there and the teenage boys got under control. A mother can't do that with her kids. It just is. And young men need an older man to keep them in check. And boys know that, fathers know that. So for our culture to come out and say, oh, we don't need men. Yes, we do, because teenage boys would be out of control.
That statement in and of itself is offensive to many. Just saying, a mom can't do that, or a woman can't do that. Those are fighting words for most of us, but yet you just said it. You believe it that much?
Oh, yeah, I do. Because I've seen it. I've dealt with mothers who'll come in and their teenage son without a dad is hitting them. There's so many studies and research show that boys without a male role model can go off the rails. So I don't care if it's unpopular. Truth is often unpopular, but women need to, for the sake of their children, not themselves, they need to admit our kids need dads, period. Now, you may not need a husband, but your kids need their father. And for you as a mother say otherwise, it's cruel to your child. Why can't mothers and fathers be very different people and bring very different things to the table?
In my book, 5 Marks of a Man, I detailed what took place over in South Africa at the 2 national parks with elephants. Have you heard that?
Yeah, absolutely. There you go.
I heard that and I thought, oh, that's ridiculous. That's an urban myth. I've been over that part of country in the world many, many, many times. If you haven't heard it, it's one park, I think it was Pilanesberg, had plenty of elephants. Kruger didn't, or vice versa. And so they thought, well, let's take elephants from over here and put them over there. And
the older males.
Well, but that's how it started. It had started, well, let's get males over, but they couldn't. They did a gurney, put it underneath them to take them on helicopters, and the gurney was breaking. Fortunately, it was breaking before they got 30 feet up in the ground. So they said, well, let's take the smaller ones. The gurney can hold them, a little girdle thing. So they flew over a bunch. And then after a while, things seemed fine, but the white rhinoceroses, where the new young males were put, were showing up dead, and they couldn't figure it out. It looked like it was bullet wounds or spears, but yet it wasn't bullet wounds and spears. And finally, they put up some cameras, and they found out it was the young males. The young males were just glory injuring and killing the white rhinoceroses, as the theory was they were sexually frustrated because the females said, you're not mature enough yet. No, you can't do anything. So that was a theory. So they said, well, they didn't know what to do. This has never happened before. There's no solution. They never anyone's ever transported elephants to another park, so let alone fix this thing, right? So someone said, well, I don't know. These are the smaller ones. Maybe they're the younger ones, and maybe they just need a little forceful fatherly touch. So they got a bigger and beefier girdles to haul over big elephants, and they brought over a few big elephants, and as the story goes, one of these young bucks started trotting up like he thinks he's all tough, and this big boy, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but big boy just took a running charge and slammed the side of the younger bull elephant, tipped him over, problem solved.
Yeah.
It was like Daddy came in and said, boys, we don't kill rhinoceroses. Boom, problem gone.
Yeah. And it's very telling when I made the comment that, that we need men and, kids need a dad, they need a man. And, you and I both said, oh, somebody's going to be mad, women are going to be mad. Why? Because why can't we say we need men and we need fathers and we need mothers? Yeah. Why does it have to be either or?
Right.
And so the idea that women feel intimidated by championing men and fathers is peculiar. But here's where it comes from. It comes from the old belief, I think, that's been around a long time, is that feminism had to rise and women need to continue to champion themselves and be championed because men are oppressive.
Right.
And if we say, masculinity is good and kids need dads and, so forth, then that means that we are saying we need to be oppressed or we will be oppressed. No, that's old. That's right. Gone. That's 1950s and 1960s. We're in, 2025 right now. So we've got to just reset here and sort of say our understanding of modern masculinity is not that men are wimps and they just cry all the time. Yeah. And it's not that men are oppressors. They're good. Right. And our goal is to teach men who have children to be good fathers and then their wives to be good mothers that complement each other.
Well, there was a time in the 60s or 70s where men did hold all the cards.
Yep.
Where men had all the power, men had all the income earning options, men had all the political office, there was that time, and there was a justifiable and necessary swing of the pendulum to focus on the needs of women, the rights, the inherent rights of women, the value that women bring, all that stuff. But I think you put it really well there, is somewhere along the line, we kind of forgot that, hey, men are people too.
Whenever revolutions are fought, there are casualties.
Yeah.
And the casualties in the feminist revolution has been the dads. And usually when you have them, they swing way too far to one side. And, interestingly, I went to University of Cincinnati Medical School.
Ah, there you go. I didn't know you had Cincinnati roots.
I loved it.
No wonder I liked you.
But I just don't. Please, what did you say? Please? Anyway, that's what I say. But, and when I was in medical school, 30 women in my class and 90 men. And so I was there and I understood it, and we had got slapped on the behind and this kind of a thing. But my dad always said to me, keep your focus forward, do great work. Do great work. Don't retaliate. Don't call names. Just do great work. That's the best thing you can do. And it served me very well. So I get it. I get why women are mad, and they were mad. But we need to reset now, because what we're doing is that we are maligning men way beyond, where they should be maligned, which is, don't hit me on the butt and don't be oppressive to me and this kind of thing. We've really got to reset. And again, this is for our kids.
Right.
Because fatherlessness in our country, or there are many dads have been sort of kicked out of their homes. I mean, these aren't guys that just abandon their kids. They went through an ugly divorce and the lawyer said, okay, you're out. I see this all the time. And so, from a child's standpoint, it's not okay. Fathers need, to be in that home. And it's not okay that we can allow this to continue to happen, because if you took one father or one grandfather and put them on every block on South Side Chicago, I am convinced that a lot of the violence and the drugs would begin to dissipate. Right. It's the elephant.
Yeah.
It's you get the men in there and the boys do well, and the daughters do a lot better too. I
was just reading in my news feed, I got some stuff from the New York Times, and I find it actually very interesting and helpful. And what just popped up recently was this thing called performative males. You ever hear this? This is I guess the new thing. It's trending on TikTok, posting stealth videos of people who are quote unquote performative males, and exactly what I'm reading it right now. So the quote is, he is the antithesis of toxic masculinity. So this is the performance is the opposite. So what this kind of guy is, he carries a tote bag, perhaps with a labubu attached. I don't even know what that is. I'm obviously not a performative male. I do not perform as a male. I have no idea what that is.
I've not met one. Mm-hmm.
He sips an iced matcha latte. He reads or pretends to read Sally Rooney or Joe Didion. I've never heard of those authors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
He wears wired headphones and baggy pants, and he listens to Clayro. I don't even know that. Not Clayro. And I'm like, okay, I'm obviously not a performative male, but I just thought, here it is again. They're contrasting it with toxic masculinity.
Right.
Can you imagine saying toxic femininity? Can you imagine having oh my God,
No.
You would get tarred and feathered.
Yes, you would. And one commentator or author said to me one time, we could have trouble around the corner, because if you take men and you push on them and push on them and push on them and tell them to go away, at some point they're done and they're going to explode. And they'll explode differently than a woman if she would. But why? Well, in our culture, we can't decide what's woman and man and girl and boy and all that kind of stuff anyway. But why can't we get to a point where we can define masculinity in a healthy, wonderful way?
Right. Men
are protectors. If I were walking downtown Chicago at midnight by myself, I'd be terrified. If I had a couple of, my son and my son-in-law who are 6'5" walking with me, I'd be less scared. I mean, they're stronger than I am. And so why can't we just say that's okay? But when it comes to other things, I'm a whole lot better than they are. So, we've got to get back to the point where we are very different. Diversity.
Yes, diversity.
Right? Don't we like diversity?
Right. Amen. Yes.
We like diversity, so let's be diverse, but come together and work cooperatively. Why do, and I'll guarantee you, the description of that pro-performance man was probably written by a woman. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
I got
Maybe
it right
not.
before me. Let's see.
But I'll guarantee there was some female influence in there. But where did that come from?
Right.
It came from the feminization of the toxic male, because the toxic male is too aggressive and too strong and too smart and too protective and likes guns. So we need to change him. Well, yeah, we all need to be tweaked in one way or another and shift degrees here and there. But why do you need to overhaul a man who's wired with a whole lot of good stuff,
right? And
particularly for his kids?
There certainly are toxic males, but we're just going to say because somebody who happens to drive a pickup truck and own a gun that he's toxic, or that some guy is, believes that he has responsibility to his family and has to protect his. It's strange. Yeah. Well, this is how did this get you, Meg, into wanting to study and write about boys? Because your book, I think it's phenomenal. Well, we'll talk about it. Dirt knows my deal is I don't read the books before the podcast. I want to talk. I'll just admit it to you. I want to talk to the person, and then if I like it, I'll go read the book. So I haven't read your book, but I have it before me, and the cover, judge a book by the cover, but the cover is freaking great. Boys should be boys. 7 secrets to raising healthy sons. And you got these guys, these kids like jumping into the wild lake off a diving board without a life vest and without a helmet. Oh, that is, God bless America. That's the way it used to be. Boys could do dangerous things without seatbelts, life vests, and helmets. The cover is fantastic. So why did you decide to write this book? Question 1.
Well, because when I wrote my father-daughter book before that, the outpouring of support and men saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I go, wow, this is beyond just the father-daughter relationship, because the whole idea of the book was daughters see their dads as somebody larger than life that they desperately want and need. Right? That's what a kid would say. The moment a kid is born, they know the difference between their mother and their father. Mm-hmm. Your voice is deeper. You're hairier. You hold your child, they feel secure. And then the mom is the softer attachment in general. And I thought, wow, men feel worse than I thought they really did. And so then I started researching men. And, as a feminist, I at first I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't need to do it. But I really did it because my son was a teenager. And I thought, I don't want him to grow up to feel like he needs to be a performer and carry a purse or whatever that they do. And it's
a man bag, not a purse.
A man bag with a man bun And so nothing wrong with man buns. I mean, yeah. But anyway,
I could have one.
And I thought, there's an attack. There's an outright attack, a war that nobody wants to admit is going on towards males. And the deeper I got into the research and the more I started looking around me and tracking what had happened over those generations, those decades, it was glaringly evident to me that we are trying to take men down. And if we have a female-dominated culture and country, we're in trouble. Because you shouldn't have a male dominate. Everybody screams about the patriarchy, right? Well, we shouldn't have a matriarchy either. And so this is kind of what's happening. And I thought that is not okay. But again, my primary reason for writing is to advocate for kids. And to say to women, your kids need their dad. And even if you're divorced and you hate the guy, your kid isn't divorced from his dad. That kid still wants his dad. I've had kids whose dads are in prison for some pretty bad stuff. The kid still wants his dad. And he doesn't want his bad behavior, but there's something in that's ingrained in us, inborn in us, that is driven towards wanting our dads. How many middle-aged men do you know, friends who you have, who are still trying to earn more money, perform better at their jobs because they want their dad's approval, even though their dad might be dead? There's something in that kid that desperately wants his father or her father to look at them and go, you're okay. Yeah, right. You're going to do really well in life.
Yes. I love that. So you have it as the 7 secrets. Can you tell us very secretively and shortly, so everyone still has to go buy your book? Just can you tell us what the secrets are, or then they wouldn't be secrets and the book would be a lie?
Yeah, well, actually, if you would kind of remind me, I don't have one of my books. I've written 2 books since then. I'm like, what are
All right,
because
all
I
right.
had the 10 Secrets of My Daughter book. So,
All right, I'll
yeah.
share them with you one by one because this is one of the ways that
Okay.
dirt adds value to me, and then you can give a little thing on it. Number 1, know how to encourage your son.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the best ways that, see, fathers sometimes are a little off on this, and mothers are off on this. And this is what we do. We teach our boys to perform well. We teach them to
Be performative.
be performative. Go to the NFL, get on the soccer team, get straight A's. Well, that's not what men need. That's not what boys need. Boys need to be encouraged to have strong character. They need to be encouraged to have courage, to persevere, to have grit, and to learn how to work hard, to learn how to be responsible. And so encouragement goes beyond the superficial performance, and it gets to the heart of the character of the man that they need to have developed. And that's where we miss the mark. You know, we create, or we help create, these boys into men who live very superficial lives. And that's what really the carrying of the bag is all about, carrying of the purse. It's the outward appearance. It's not real.
Right.
It's look like this and play like this and make more money. Well, that's not the substance of the man. And so that's where I started the book off.
Number 2 secret is understand what your boy needs.
And that's where the rubber meets the road, and that's where, you know, people's hair, the hair on their neck starts to stand up, particularly if you're mother, because we don't want our boys to need what they really need. We don't want them to have this need to go into the woods and pick up a stick and shoot an invisible bear because he's figuring
So
out.
violent.
They're violent. They have a natural aggression in them. And if you start to say, no, they don't, no, they don't, no, they don't, then you do a huge disservice to the boy, because the aggression just builds and builds and builds, and it comes out sideways in a very bad way. Boys have a pecking order. They need to know who's the top dog in the class and who's the weakling and who's this and who's this. And girls don't really do that, okay? So boys have very different needs than girls do. You know, girls need to please the teacher. They need to color in the lines sooner than their other friend. But boys have a pecking order. And that's where the maleness and the teenage boyness comes into play. I need to know who's bigger and stronger. And so show me. And so they want to work that out. They need to have imagination. They need to allow to play with a stick that they think is a gun to shoot the invisible bear. That freaks modern mothers out because they hate guns.
Right.
So they don't want our boys to play with a stick. Well, you can't do that, because you need to acknowledge that boys have a need for physical expression and to figure out the pecking order, even if it's imaginary.
Now, figuring out the pecking order, what does that mean for, you know, at least a 13-year-old, when you're in the bottom 50% of the pecking order, when the world in your school is, at least at my school, was built around, you know, physical accomplishments and feats. You know, eventually the world is not about that, and those are about physical accomplishments and feats in junior high and senior high. You go to your 15-year class reunion, you go, oh, most of those folks just never figure out how to make a living and take care of their families. So how do you balance, what does that mean? Where they fit in the pecking order, but that's the pecking order for a short period of time. So
Exactly.
how does that relate?
Well, and it is for a short period of time. And that's where boys are sort of figuring out what life is all about and why do I feel these feelings. And for the bottom 50% of the class, here's what happens, because often it's the bottom 50% who might get bullied, who end up rising above and often do very well in life.
Yep.
And it's the prom king
Yes.
who ends up being a dork or
Right.
a loser when
Right.
he's 40, right?
Right.
So the whole idea is that a parent's job is to figure out that boy's strengths And how is he really strong? And then in his mind, he'll go, well, I'm not very good at sports, or I'm not very good at that, but daggone, I'm really good at this, or whatever. And so boys and men are very competitive people. I mean, women are too, but they have to figure out what their strength is and what they believe they're stronger than the other guy in. And, this was our son. He was a late bloomer, a very late bloomer, and he just wouldn't study. I bribed him. I offered to pay him to study in high school. And I said, because a lot of boys just aren't motivated in high school.
Yes,
and parents, how can I get him to study?
I was
How can I get him to study?
a loser in high school. That was me through and through.
Well, I said to my son, how much money is it going to take? Okay. Well, he said, no, because I was mom. And he was like, anyway, sophomore year in college, the beginning of sophomore year in college, he said to me, okay, I'm ready. And I said, you're ready for what? And he said, I'm ready to study. And that kid was off and going. And he flip-flopped, but he recognized his strength and his intelligence, and it clicked.
Yeah.
And he said, okay. And now he's running with that. And the pride in him is great. I can see it. But that's what goes through kind of boys' heads and minds, is what am I really good at, and where can I really excel? Where can I be strong? And that begins in the woods when he's 3.
Right. Well, the Bible says, train up a child in the way in which he should go, and when he grows older, he won't depart.
From it.
Doesn't necessarily mean, though it can mean, give them a sense of morality and spirituality, but I think the best application of that verse is really when you notice a way a child should go. The Bible also says, do what you do well and you'll serve before kings.
Exactly.
If you can just this is the place to focus here, son. You may not be getting the strokes right now in the varsity sports obsessed culture of your high school, maybe, but man, if this is here, this is going to be with you for decades and decades versus the next 3 years of high school.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the creation of the character. And every boy is wired, and every man is wired with a sense of who they are and where they need to go. And, I tell you, boys love Bible stories. And one of my real frustrations teaching our son Bible stories was about David and Goliath. He didn't care about David. He wanted to know what Goliath looked like. And it really threw me. My husband's, it's okay. But absolutely, we're teaching boys to have depth of character, and that involves their faith. And here's another interesting statistic too, that typically it's the mothers who make everybody go to church, right? They drag their husbands. Yep. But they found that when a mother alone takes the kids to church, about 30% of those grow into adults who have a strong faith. But when their dad takes them to church, and dad, if it's dad is the leader there, 70% do. Again, women will hate this, the use of the word authority. In a child's eyes, dad has authority in some issues that a mother doesn't. Now, we all know it. We don't want to say it. When I applied to medical school the first year round, I didn't get to any. I thought my life was over. I had no plan B, yada, yada. And when I came home to live after that time and get a job, my mom said, don't worry, you'll get in. I go, yeah, you have to say that. You're my mother, so I sort of don't really believe you.
Right.
But I overheard my dad talking to a friend one day on the phone. His sentence changed my life, and he said to the guy on the other end of the phone, yes, my daughter Meg will be going to medical school in the next year or two. And in that minute, I knew it was going to happen.
Oh, wow.
Because my dad said so. Was my dad more stronger or more of an influence, or I loved him? No. He was my dad who didn't have to say that. But my mother said it, encouraged me, because in my mind she had to say that. Because if your mother won't say good things about
you're
you,
screwed.
might as well hang it.
Yeah, you're done. You're over. Right.
Because that's what mothers have to do. It doesn't mean they have more or less influence than your dad does.
Yeah.
There's something about a dad's words in a kid's eyes that carry weight and teeth. And you can't describe it. But in that moment, I knew, and sure enough, it came to pass. But I will tell you, when I was writing books, if you've ever written books, an author sits down with your computer and you go, I have nothing to say. I have my outline. My publisher wants this and this and this, but I don't know if I can do it, even if I've written 5 books. I don't have anything left to say. And this is even for a woman saying it, which I always think I have plenty to say.
Right.
I felt I had nothing to say. But I heard my dad's voice in my mind going, you don't think you can because you haven't gotten in yet, but you will. You will have this book done in a year. And so it played itself out over and over. One sentence from a dad changed the course of my life. I don't mean to be overly dramatic, but really, I got it in those minutes, and I was off and flying, even though I didn't believe I could do it. But all I needed to know was my dad believed it.
There is a power to a dad's words that is just stunning, really. You even think about the horrible things that dads say. Mm-hmm. We do say some horrible things, and it doesn't bounce off kids as easily as when your mom says it. People are in counseling for what their dad said to them, not what their mom said to them. You know, there's just a power.
Dads have the power to undo a kid, and here's why. Again, I try to talk from a kid's vantage point. In a kid's mind, you know, his moms have to say things. And his mom has to be there. Mom can't leave. You know, in a kid's mind, she can't leave. She's your mom. She's where life starts. Like I said, if mom doesn't love you, I mean, just go away. I mean, hang it up. But a dad always has a choice. He has a choice to stay. He has a choice to parent. He has a choice regarding what he says. So if dad chooses to say something positive about you, it really carries weight, because in a kid's mind, it's a choice.
Yeah.
Because we know a whole lot of dads out there who choose not to stay or choose not to say things to their kids, at least in a kid's mind. And a kid always believes if dad isn't there, even if they never met their dad, it's because of them. It's because of something they did or didn't do. Well, if I were a cuter baby, dad would have stuck around. Or if I would have this, you cannot shake that out of a child until he's well into adulthood. You know, we try to convince parents who are divorcing to convince their kids, it's not your fault, you're wasting your words, because kids believe cognitively and developmentally that it's something they did that is driving dad away, and it's devastating to them because dad is enormous need and character in their lives. So when dad leaves, they really screwed up. As a matter of fact, they may have screwed up the rest of their life. This is what goes through in a kid's mind.
Man Camp 2025 is just around the corner, October 17th and 19th in Southwest Ohio. Thousands of men from all over the literal world are going to be descending on our property, connecting with each other, having fun, laughing, connecting with God, stretching ourselves, pushing ourselves, playing, all sorts of things. It's really going to be phenomenal. And this year, man, we have some new things we're doing this year that I want to make sure that you're in on. First off, Bear Grylls, world-renowned survivalist, camper. Bear Grylls is going to be with us. He's going to be great. Dante Bowe, Grammy Award-winning artist. Dante is going to be there with us, helping us out with worship. It is going to be an amazing 3-day experience. Get off the grid. Push yourself. Try something new. Form some bonds. Form some relationships. Have some hangout time. Have some laughter. We get all that and a lot more at Man Camp. I've got a 15% discount off code for you if you enter podcast15 at checkout, podcast15. You can claim your spot right now and do it quickly at mancamp.us, and then invite someone to come with you, and I'll be looking forward to that. Your third secret. We're going so well here, Meg. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get them all in, but they're great. Third secret, which is straight to my heart, is boys were made for the outdoors and adventure.
Yeah, and some girls too.
Yes.
My husband gave me a small chainsaw this year, and it's
Your
my
husband
best
gave
friend right
you
now.
a chainsaw. That's
I have a chainsaw. As a matter of fact, we love to work in the woods. We love to clear land. It's a weird thing. It's just relaxing. And I almost cut the tip of my finger off. Anyway, okay. Boys are made for the outdoors. This is why so many boys are coming up with a diagnosis of ADHD, and they're being blunted by medications because teachers want them to sit still. This is why often boys in boys' schools do so well in single-sex schools, because they learn differently. They're bouncy. They need to move. They're visual people. They're gross motor people. You know, you look at a little boy playing on a floor. What does he do? He gets the biggest thing with wheels that he can find, and rolls it across the floor. Or, you know, they just need creative play. They need a tree to climb and to take risks on. You know, and we're so risk averse in our culture. We tell boys to sit still and stay in their little safe box. It doesn't work. Boys are risk takers, and a lot of risk is done outdoors. They need to throw things and kick things and hit things and move things. As a matter of fact, fathers are the same way. One of the things that drive, and we have literature that shows it, but one of the things that drives wives and mothers crazy is that they do the work with a kid, and dad comes home and only wants to play with a kid. That's good, because kids need play. Boys need to wrestle. That's their bonding mechanism. They need touch and they need movement. And that's why they like the outdoors, because there's room there. Girls don't need it. Girls will sit still at a table and color in the lines and do their crafts. Boys can't thrive on that. And the sooner we accept it and let them be who they are, the quicker we can get them on the right path to life. You know, we say, let kids be who they are, but then we don't.
Yeah.
Then we put dresses on 2-year-old boys. And I had a mother, I kept referring to this patient who had this beautiful smocked yellow dress on as a she. And the mother was incensed. I said, ma'am, he has this child has a dress on. And she literally said, that's because he chooses a dress. Give me a break.
Yeah.
So we won't acknowledge what is and what's inside the kid. Even from the get-go, we try to manipulate it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Let the kid pick up the stick and shoot something. If he doesn't like a stick and shoot gun, let him play with his train set. Let him play with ever. But don't force him to play with a doll.
Yeah.
Or wear a yellow dress.
Yeah, and we're talking here, we're talking in generalities, but generalities are generalities because they're true. I mean, there's certainly some boys that prefer to color in color books and coloring
then
books.
Let them do it.
And
exactly.
Right. And there's certainly girls, we used to call them this. We used to call them tomboys. They used to wear that.
And they grow up to have chainsaws.
Or they grow up and they're fashion designers, or they still love outside, climb trees.
Yeah. That's the whole point.
Right.
Let them be who they are. Don't cherry pick.
Yeah.
And don't say, well, I don't like this, so I'm not going to allow my son to do this. If your son likes to take risks, be there and let him take a risk. And oh, by the way, Mom, you're going to have a harder time probably letting your boy take a risk than his dad will. That's okay.
You just glossed over something earlier, which is, I think, insightful. For some is fighting words, and for others they've looked at it, this is old school, but it's worth revisiting. And that is how we educate our young males and how we punish. There's very few male teachers anymore who understand, therefore little boys, you inherently understand your own sex more than the other sex. And little boys getting dinged for not acting like little girls who are more in control and like order. Little boys don't like order, or they don't. It doesn't come their way naturally. And taking out things like recess out of schools. I used to, when I was growing up, we had 2 recesses a day, 2 a day. And I remember coming in, we would play kickball in the mud. The school let you play kickball in the mud, and you would track in the mud and be on the bottom of your kid's sneakers. It would come in and it would harden up and fall off on the linoleum floor, and the room would be trashed. And that's the way it was. You can't do that today. You can't make something dirty today. You can't allow kids to just go out and play without supervision and helmets. And I wonder how much of that, you already mentioned, maybe that's part of the ADHD crisis, is we're just confining kids too much. We're not allowing them to be spazzes when they should be spazzes.
Unquestionably. Because most people who send kids in for evaluation, boys in for evaluation to me, are the teachers.
Right, yes.
Most elementary school teachers are women. And most elementary school teachers feel woman power. Now, I don't get psychobabbly because I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but this is just my 2 cents. And they want boys to act more like girls. A, because it's easier.
It is easier.
And B, because they like women power, so they feed into the power of the girls in the class. And the boys become a pain. And the boys aren't doing what the girls are doing, and then the teacher starts to dislike them a little bit. Oh, you're a pain in the neck. You're always jumping. You always want to go to the bathroom. You always, firing spitballs or something. Yeah. And they start to not like this so much. A lot of boys are later at reading and developing than the girls are, and boys are often labeled learning disability, reading disability, whatever disability in early elementary school, because they're not appreciated or acknowledged as being different from girls. They are the worst thing you can do to punish a boy in elementary school is make him stay in for recess.
I could have guessed you were going to say
parents,
that, yes.
Please, the last thing a bouncy boy needs from misbehaving is to stay in for recess.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right, but there's this antagonism towards boy behavior, which is healthy, normal boy behavior. Unhealthy boy behavior is screaming at the teacher or hitting a kid, with a bat or something, whatever. But normal boy behavior is bouncy, and they're looking around and they're trying to figure out what they're going to eat for lunch or what they're going to do after school, and so there are a lot of factors in it, but boys are labeled too quickly with having learning disorders because they don't keep up with girls. They'll catch up. And that they need more movement that girls don't, and that's perfectly fine. But they're asked to fit in the feminine box, the feminine paradigm, even at early years. And it's really not fair. That's why I'm a proponent of single-sex education. And a lot of people say, oh, no, boys need to learn how to get along with girls. They will. They will, because most of their life they're going to spend their lives. But boy education in particular, because a lot of the teachers are male-oriented, they understand boys, and they give boys the opportunity to learn at their own pace and to do their own thing.
Yeah. All right, let's just do one more. These are all good. We're just running out of time, and I want to leave a lot of meat in the bone for people to get the book. I'm obviously going like, oh, okay, it's a good book. It's going to be on my list. Good stuff, Meg. Let's do one more here, because this was, I think, it's maybe the antithesis of some of the other things you've talked about. It comes really well right in the back end of freedom, outdoors, environment go, and that is boys need rules. If you don't set them, they feel lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there you go. We're back to the African, wildlife preserve, yes. Whatever. But boys feel a lot of energy, particularly during the teen years. Testosterone. They're feeling a lot of emotional and physical sensation they never had, and they feel that they could get out of control, and it's terrifying. A boy who is let free to do whatever he wants, particularly in high school, is a very scared male because he knows he somewhere along the way lacks the ability to set a healthy limit. He could drive himself off the edge, and he knows it. So he needs a safety net. He needs the wall that he can run into that says, you're done. This is as far as you go, kid. And there's where the dad is. Run into me. I'm the safety wall. I know how to do this. I know where the limit is because I've been there and done that. I'm 45 and you're 16. And I can set the boundary here because I know you need it. And a boy who feels that his life is a free-for-all and he can do anything. And it's true with a girl too, but it's more intensified with a boy because he has that physical energy, that aggression that's in there that a girl may not feel, or she can channel in a different way. But when a boy feels that aggression build and he doesn't know where the limits are, and even if he does know where the limits are, he doubts that he can erect the limits on his own, it's terrifying. Boys, teenage boys who feel out of control are very frightened because they know their own ability. You know, they could run somebody over. They could do something horrible. We all could.
Well, and as we've touched on already, not a news flash to most of us, you know, women, girls are developing quicker, so they're actually smarter as a young age than boys are, which is a good reason to consider holding your boy back from starting first grade, so they have more of a level playing field. And the second thing is they're more physically dominant. So we're stuper and more physically dominant, more muscle mass as a small kid. And when I first got my first dog, a Rottweiler, I realized I've got to get this thing under control because this is not like little Chihuahua.
Right.
This could jack somebody up. When you have a boy in your home, the onus is on you to really up your game as far as healthily controlling, navigating, funneling, fencing, ruling, whatever it is with your kid. Like, because unchecked, he can be a nuisance in a way that a girl cannot be.
No, not only a nuisance, he could kill himself.
Yeah.
He could, and that's why I tell parents, if you can't set boundaries and rules for your 6-year-old that are going to stick, good luck with a 16-year-old with a set of car keys in his hands.
Right.
Because now
Right.
he cannot just, run into the road. He can go out and kill himself in the car.
Right.
That's how dangerous life for a boy can be. And does he want to do it? Of course not. Does he know he's out of control? Maybe. But those are the physical abilities of boys. And I want to say another thing too. Girls and women often fear strong men. They would never say that. Often women and wives will try to provoke a husband to the point where he gets so mad he might harm them just to see if he would. That's a whole different podcast.
That's called toxic femininity right there. That's we'll have you back for toxic femininity.
But really, people who are not men, women, want to know how far how far they can go before the explosion occurs. They need to test the strength of the guy.
Yeah.
We don't need to do that with one another. You don't see many women girls on the playground fist fighting. I mean, maybe, but women kind of don't need that. But they need to know from. And the little dirty secret is most women want a masculine man. If you look at women who marry, they usually marry men who maybe earn more money than they do, regardless of what that is.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Anyway, I'm going down a bad path now. Right. We're off of boys.
That's all right.
Just kind of.
Well, I was back to my first dog, the Rottweiler. I bought a book that was. I knew I needed to figure this out, and I couldn't afford to send him to obedience school. So I was like, I got to figure this out. I can afford a book. So I bought this book. It's called The Kohler Method of Dog Training, and it was written by, his last name is Kohler, who was the chief animal trainer for Disney. So remember that old movie with Homeward Bound with
Homeward Bound, yeah.
Homeward Bound, right? And then he also did Old Yeller, and he was the guy who was the animal thing. So he had this whole thing on how to train your dog, and it was hardcore. I mean hardcore. People would see me training my Rottweiler, they'd about turn me into the SPCA. But one of those things was, he said, look, I know my methods seem extreme, and I know you're going to get it criticized, but just think of this. the next time an ice cream truck is coming down the road making a noise and a temptation, and your neighbor who looks at himself as enlightened and doesn't want to put restrictions or do hard training on his dog, as his dog starts to run towards the ice cream truck and he's saying, stop, 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 he's not going to stop and he's going to get killed and run over. But your dog, in the midst of all the temptations, when he's running at and you say stop, he will stop. The most loving thing you do for your dog is this training. That really stuck with me because that was before I had kids. So I was like,
yep.
Yeah, it's true.
Exact same principle.
Yeah, it is.
Exact same principle. You know, the 6-year-old, if you can't get that kid to stop saying shut up to you, he's going to kill himself in a car when he's 16. Now, you think, well, that's an exaggeration. Not really, because, you need to train up that child and setting limits. And kids need to learn how to live with boundaries, and particularly boys, and particularly, those strong dogs. Because if a boy doesn't have that and he hits the teen years, again, if he didn't have a dad, he'll go wild. Mm-hmm. And he'll be terrified. Boys that do horrible things, even if it's shooting people, they're scared little kids on the inside. They really are. I really believe that.
I think this is why many women would be understandably concerned when we start talking about how boys need boys, boys need dads, daughters need dad. For the mother who's a single mom, doesn't have a husband, he's a deadbeat, or he died, or she adopted a child and wasn't married. All those are wonderful things. What do you do if you're a mom and you don't have a strong father figure around? But it's important. What happens there?
It's a great question because I admire single mothers so much. First of all, you can't be two people. You can be a great single mother. However, you need to acknowledge, particularly if you have a boy, that he has to have a male presence somewhere. So find a good man. He doesn't have to spend a lot of time with him, but expose him to a grandfather, godfather, an uncle, a coach, a teacher, and talk with him about how that man lives. Did you notice that coach was really upset, but he didn't scream and yell at those guys or those kids, and talk about how a good man behaves, but he needs to see it because boys are visual people. He needs to create in his mind what a strong, good man looks like, and he wants to be that man. I had one very well-known guy who won Super Bowls, great guy, and he said, I grew up on the wrong side of the tracks, but I had a friend he wasn't wealthy, very, very poor, but I would go over to his house periodically, and we would sit down at the dinner table, and I didn't have a dad, and he had a dad, and I remember what it felt like to sit at a table with a dad there. And he said, all I remember thinking is, one day I want that. One day I will have that. And guess what? He has 7 kids. He's an amazing father. And when I was interviewing on my podcast, he had twins and he was feeding the kids bottles as we were talking. He was a great dad, but he had a picture in his mind. And that picture worked for him, and he didn't have to. So you have to, as a single mom, don't deny that the kid needs a dad, and don't convince yourself that you can be a dad, but acknowledge he needs a dad. So go find him a good one to expose him to. And if you're really lucky, ask that man to spend some time with him. If you know him and he has a family and it's a friend's father, and ask if you could maybe take him on vacation for a couple days.
Yeah.
Good guys will do that. Say, hey, I'm taking my son. Why don't you come camping with us?
Yeah.
And often that's all the kid needs, but he needs male exposure.
Yeah, that's good. Meg, is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet, or questions I should be asking you that I haven't asked?
Let's see. I think we pretty much covered it. We pretty much covered it. I always encourage dads, to develop a faith in their kids, because boys and girls will at some point ask you, what does God look like? Does he have a beard? Does he float? Can you see through an angel? So have those answers ready for your sons. We expect those questions to come from daughters, but They come from boys, and they want to hear their dad's response. So be ready. Dad, Grandma just died, and I'm going to a funeral. Where is she? They want to know what their dad thinks. So think on that and prepare on that and have those answers ready for your sons, not just your daughters.
That's good. Dr. Meg Meeker, her latest book is Boys Should Be Boys, 7 Secrets to Raising Healthy Sons. And I've loved talking with you. I've been a fan of you and your work for a long, long time. So it's great having you on the podcast. And we need to do this more often with Meg. In fact, she doesn't even need to write a book. I'll have her back.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Hey, I've got a whole bunch of books I've written. And believe it or not, just a shameless plug a little bit.
Yes.
I've written all these books and I've done speaking, Right now, I'm focusing on consulting with and coaching dads to understand their kids better. Because I'm convinced once they can understand their kids and once they can understand how their kids see them, boom, they're off and running.
So how do you do that? Is that a one-on-one Zoom thing? Or
I do groups. I do one-on-one. I just go to my website. It is so much fun. And this really sort of grew out of my working with some of the NFL guys, it was so fun.
Yeah.
It was so fun. And so I thought, you know what? Dads need help. They don't need me to change them. Okay, because I'm not a man expert, but I'm a kid expert. And I can show them what their kids want and think. I can show them how out of control their kid is going to be, their son is going to be, if they don't hang in there when the kid is 17, if they don't get in there and set some walls up. And when I talk like that, dads get it. And they go, okay, I can do that.
Right.
So that's what I do. So I do dad coaching, one-on-one groups, anything. It is so much fun. And I thought at first, this is not going to work. I'm a middle-aged grandmother. But it's like the NFL stuff. But all I needed to do was tell them what their kids are like and what their kids want, and then let them go. Because here's the thing. I talk too much. Every dad is wired with everything he needs to be a good dad. They sometimes just need somebody to come along with an electric rod and go, zap.
Yeah.
And then they're off and running. I'm the zapper. That's it. I teach dads how to tweak it 1 degree, 2 degrees, 4 degrees, whatever. And I'm certainly not in there to overhaul them because they don't need it.
That's kind of ironic that it would be a woman who coaches some fathers, but that could be actually more powerful than a dad.
In a way, because I don't come in and tell them what to do, and I don't come in and tell them to change.
Yeah.
I support what they have, and I show them that their kids want what they have. And it's good that they're strong when they hold them as a baby because it makes a difference to the baby. So I advocate for kids by helping their dads understand them, if that makes sense. I used to travel and tour with Dave Ramsey. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yes,
Good old guy from Nashville, and he wears cowboy boots. And he says, shut up on the air. And so we toured and did these things, and I would talk on dads. And one man stood up, he was irate at me. And usually it's women. I get hate mail from mothers and women. But he was irate. What makes you think you're an expert on men? I said, I'm not, but I'm an expert on kids. And if I spent 15 minutes talking with you and your kid, I will tell you exactly what your kid wants from you. And he sat down. But his whole idea was, who are you to come along and change me? I'm not here to do that.
Yeah.
I'm just here to talk to you about what kids want from fathers and that you already have inside you that you're not sure if you should expose or not. Like, letting your kids climb trees up to 20 feet and see if they're going to fall.
Yeah, right, exactly. That was a thing I loved about my upbringing. I grew up in suburbia, and I was a part of suburbia in Pittsburgh. And being in the suburbs, at least in Pittsburgh in the 70s, meant that it was still being developed, which meant that there was woods. You could get into woods, which for all intents and purposes, you felt like you were a national forest. You saw no end to it, and you could freaking do anything in there. Build tree houses, have games, just pick up rocks under which is crayfish, and it was like a whole other world. And I've thought many times, like, I don't know how I would have turned out if I didn't have that. I don't even know how kids today who are anything at all like me are anywhat normal. In fact, I can actually think, and there's a whole movement about this. Well, I can't remember the name of the book or who the guy was, but there's some power in being in nature, lifting up a rock and seeing a bug or something like that, and wondering maybe this is part of the plight of inner city youth that we have. They can't have that.
They can't express who they are.
Yeah.
They're not allowed out of the box.
Yes.
And we're trying to put boys in a box. We had a little boy in our neighborhood who we were growing up when I was an adult. He was 5. His mom let him wear dresses. Great. Okay, it's a good thing he wasn't born in 2024. He would come over to our house and he'd lift up the doormat, and he'd eat all the roly-polies. And I thought, this is disgusting. What's wrong with this kid? And his mother lets him run around in dresses. What's wrong with her? He grew up, and I saw him in my office. He's 21. He was a hockey player. I said, I just have to ask you, why did you run around in your sister's dresses? Because we thought, oh, he's got this conflict. He goes, you know what? Because I was in a phase of life I never wore underwear, and it felt so good to have dresses.
Just have something brushing up against my Jerry boys down there.
That was it.
It was wonderful.
That was it. And we're sitting, oh, he needs transgender.
It was his guilt.
Mom
Yeah,
needs to take him
right.
to psychiatrist. He's running around eating roly-polies going, this is great. And that was
Airing
it.
the boys out. It's wonderful.
Exactly. And now, sadly, if he were alive now, people would have him in a psychiatrist's office.
Yeah, right.
That's how we've come. So that's why I speak up on behalf of boys, too. Because dresses aren't always bad if they have the right reason for wearing them, I guess.
Well, Meg, if someone wants to follow up more on your work or reach out to you or anything of the sort, where can they go?
Yeah, meekerparenting.com, and I have a lot available, and if dads want a little bit of help or a little bit of this, I get dads on Zoom calls with their wives or with their kids or anything, so meekerparenting.com.
This has been fantastic, everybody. There's something here for you. This isn't just a podcast to hear interesting information from interesting people like Meg, but it's a time to put something into place, and I'll tell you what, you've got a boy in the house, man, get your rear end home and do something different now. Any of this stuff is fantastic. And if you don't have a male in the house, moms, great insight here as to how to find a healthy male influence inside of your house and inside your life. It's been great today. We'll see you next time on The Aggressive Life. Thanks for joining us on this journey toward aggressive living. Find more resources, articles, past episodes, and more at briantome.com. My new book, a 60-day devotional called The 5 Marks for Man, 60 Days to a Powerful Life, along with all the other books in the 5 Marks library, are open right now on Amazon. Be sure to leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcast. Then send an email to dirt, that's dirt, at briantome.com to get a free Aggressive Life sticker. Find more on Instagram at briantome. The Aggressive Life is a production of Crossroads Church, Cincinnati, Ohio.